My name is Naomi Ellis. I was 34 years old when my mother stood in my sister's new studio, smiled at 46 people, and said, "Nobody hires a woman who needed a new kidney. We only moved her clients because she was a liability." She said it beside a ribbon-cutting table with gold scissors, cupcakes, and my own poster behind her with my sister's name printed at the bottom. I stood near the back door with a plain white envelope in my hand. I looked thin. I knew that. My hair was growing back uneven after months of dialysis and transplant medication. My gray dress hung loose on my shoulders. My mother thought I looked like proof that she had been right about me. So I smiled back and set the envelope on the registration table. "Then you won't mind opening this in front of the credit union officer," I said. My sister Avery laughed first. Then she saw the logo on the envelope and stopped. Inside were the records that would close her business account, cancel her grant award, freeze my parents' access to my money, and put every lie they had told in one room with witnesses. If your own mother said that in a room full of clients and neighbors, would you stay quiet or make her open the file? Tell me in the comments, because I still think about the second before I chose the file. What happened next did not look dramatic at first. No one screamed. No one fainted. The room just went quiet in pieces. First, the photographer lowered his camera. Then, the president of the Chamber of Commerce stepped away from the scissors. Then a woman in a navy suit came out of the side office and said, "Mrs. Ellis, Ms. Ellis, we need both of you in the conference room now." My mother said, "Naomi, don't embarrass this family." I said, "You used my transplant to steal my business. Embarrassment is the smallest thing in this building." To understand why that sentence ended my family, I need to go back to February 3rd, 2024, the day my kidney function hit 8%. I owned a small packaging design studio called Northline Paper. It was not glamorous. I designed labels for coffee roasters, soap makers, bakeries, and local food brands. My office was 740 square feet above a barber shop in downtown Hillcrest. I had 2 desks, one standing printer, sample shelves, a gray sofa, and a brass drafting ruler my grandfather had used when he drew house plans in the 1970s. That ruler sat on my desk every day. By early 2024, Northline had 11 active clients and 4 monthly retainers. I made about $76,000 a year when things went well. I was not rich, but I paid my bills on time. My business account at Maple Ridge Credit Union had $31,480 in it. My personal savings had $22,900. I had a private disability policy because my accountant had pushed me to buy one after watching another freelancer lose everything during a medical crisis. That policy would later save me. At the time, I was more worried about making it to the bathroom without passing out. I had IgA nephropathy. It had been quiet for years, then it stopped being quiet. My ankles swelled until my socks left deep rings. I tasted metal when I ate. I threw up in the alley behind a client meeting and wiped my mouth before walking back in with a folder of label samples. I told myself I was tired. I told myself I could push through one more deadline. My nephrologist, Dr. Annika Shaw, did not let me keep pretending. "Naomi," she said, looking at my labs on the screen, "you are in kidney failure. We need to start dialysis next week, and we need to move you higher on the transplant list." I remember the sound of the paper under me on the exam table. I remember my hands going cold. I remember looking at the wall poster that explained fistula care in 6 drawings, like my life had suddenly become a checklist. "Can I work?" I asked. Some days, yes. Some days, no. Dialysis is not a small interruption. My first thought was not death. It was my client calendar. That sounds strange unless you have built something alone. Northline was not just work. It was the first place where nobody called me the difficult daughter. Nobody compared me to Avery. Nobody told me I was too practical, too quiet, too hard to celebrate. Clients came to me because I listened, kept records, and delivered what I promised. My parents had never understood that. My father, Ron Ellis, sold insurance for 38 years and believed anything without a boss was a hobby. My mother, Carol, had spent my whole life managing appearances. She ironed tablecloths before church potlucks and corrected people's stories if they made our family sound ordinary. My younger sister, Avery, was the one who looked right in family photos. Blonde hair, big smile, easy laugh, always starting something new and never finishing it. When Avery opened a candle company, my parents bought the jars. When she launched a lifestyle blog, they paid for the camera. When she tried event planning, they covered the deposit after she forgot to refund a bride. When I opened Northline, Dad asked how long I planned to play office. I should have remembered that before I called them from the parking lot outside Dr. Shaw's office. Mom answered on the second ring. "Mom," I said, "my kidneys are failing." There was a long silence. Then she said, "Oh, honey, we will keep the wheels turning." That phrase sounded comforting then. We will keep the wheels turning. She said it again the next week when Dad drove me to my first dialysis session. The clinic smelled like disinfectant and coffee from the nurse's station. Recliners lined the wall. Machines clicked and hummed. A tech named Marcus wrapped a blood pressure cuff around my arm and explained every step. My mother sat beside me for the first hour, scrolling her phone. Dad left to take a call. When Avery came by, she took a selfie with me from a high angle and posted it with a caption about brave sisters. I did not ask her to delete it because I was too tired to start a fight. Dialysis was 4 hours, 3 times a week. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Blood out, blood clean, blood back in. I tried to work from the chair, but my hands cramped. My blood pressure dropped. Sometimes I slept through entire afternoons and woke up not knowing what day it was. Still, I was competent. Tired is not incompetent. Sick is not stupid. Weak is not permission. Dr. Shaw documented that clearly from the beginning. Every transplant appointment included a basic capacity note because I was handling my own consent forms, medication schedule, insurance calls, and business decisions. My parents did not care about those notes. On February 19th, Mom brought a folder to my apartment. She sat at my kitchen table while I was wrapped in a blanket, trying not to shake from the cold that always settled into my bones after treatment. "Just practical paperwork," she said. "Limited power of attorney, HIPAA release, business continuity authorization. If you get the transplant call at 2 in the morning, someone needs to handle deposits, rent, mail, boring things." "I can ask my accountant," I said. Her face tightened. "Your accountant is not family." Dad put a pen beside my mug. "Naomi, we're keeping the wheels turning, that's all." Avery leaned against the counter, eating crackers from my pantry. "You always act like help is an attack." I signed because I was scared. I signed because I had dialysis in 2 hours. I signed because Dr. Shaw had just told me a transplant call could come any day, and the idea of missing it because I had not filled out the right form terrified me. But I did read part of it. That mattered later. The document said limited authority for medical scheduling, mail pickup, bill payment under $5,000, and business continuity for existing invoices only. It did not allow new contracts. It did not allow client transfer. It did not allow anyone to use my name, sell my equipment, change my bank signers, or apply for benefits on my behalf. Mom saw me reading and sighed. "You are exhausting even when you're attached to tubes," she said. I laughed weakly because I thought she was joking. She was not. The transplant call came on March 11th at 1:37 a.m. I was asleep on my sofa with my phone under my hand. The coordinator said there was a kidney, a good match, and I needed to be at St. Agnes within 90 minutes. I called my parents. Dad drove. Mom packed my charger, medication list, and the soft blue cardigan I wore to appointments. Avery came because she wanted to support the big moment, but she spent most of intake texting. Surgery took 5 hours. I woke up with a line in my neck, a catheter, a drain, and pain that felt like a hot wire across my lower abdomen. But the kidney started working before morning. My creatinine dropped. Nurses smiled when they checked the output bag. Dr. Shah squeezed my shoulder and said, "This is very good." I cried when she left. For the first time in months, I could imagine a future that did not revolve around a machine. My parents were sweet the first 3 days. Mom brought broth. Dad read discharge instructions. Avery posted another photo of my hand in the hospital bed and wrote, "Family first always." I did not see what was happening outside my room. On March 13th, while I was still inpatient, someone logged into my business email from my parents' home internet. That login created an auto-forward rule. Every email sent to Naomi at Northline Paper copied to Avery's new Gmail account. On March 14th, my disability policy received a direct deposit change request. The form listed my mother's checking account as the new destination. The signature looked like mine if you had never seen me write after surgery. The witness line had Avery's initials. On March 15th, my credit union got a request to add Dad as an authorized signer on Northline's business account. Attached was the limited POA, but only pages 1 and 7, page 4, the one that listed the limits, was missing. On March 18th, Avery registered a business name with the state, Ellis & Co. Creative. On March 21st, 3 of my clients received an email from my address. The email said I was stepping back because transplant medications had affected my mental sharpness, and that Avery would be taking over active accounts to protect deadlines. I did not send that email. I was in my parents' guest room that day, sweating through a fever while Mom checked my temperature every hour and told me not to look at screens because the doctor said stress could reject the kidney. Dr. Shah had said no such thing. When I asked for my laptop, Mom said, "You need to heal." When I asked for my phone, Dad said, "You keep missing medication alarms because you stare at messages." When I asked whether any clients had checked in, Avery said, "People understand. Nobody expects you to be useful right now." Useful. That word sat in the room like a dirty glass. I was too sick to fight every hour. Transplant recovery is not just surgery. It is medication schedules at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. exactly. It is measuring urine. It is checking temperature. It is learning which foods can hurt the new kidney. It is panic when your incision pulls. It is terror that one missed pill could ruin the gift someone else's family had just given you. So I focused on staying alive. That is what abusers count on. They count on your world getting small. By early April, my incision was healing. My labs improved. Dr. Shah told me I could start answering work emails in short blocks. "You are medically recovering," she said. "You are not cognitively impaired." I remembered that sentence because it proved I had never lost capacity. The troubles started when I asked Mom to drive me to my office. She was washing a mug at the sink. She did not turn around. "There's nothing urgent there. I have sample shelves, invoices, files. I need to see what came in." Avery handled it. Handled what? The mug clinked hard in the sink. "Naomi, we are keeping the wheels turning." That was the first time. The phrase made me afraid. I waited until she left for the grocery store. Dad was in the garage. Avery was at some meeting. My phone was on the side table charging. I opened it and found 94 unread emails, most already marked read. I scrolled with shaking hands. Client after client had replied to the retirement email. "Naomi, we are so sorry to hear about the cognitive complications." "Naomi, Avery said you approved the transition. Can you confirm?" "Naomi, we got the invoice from Ellis & Co. Should we pay that instead?" The worst one came from Brewline Coffee, my oldest client. "Naomi, the new files Avery sent use your 2022 label system, but the printer says the measurements are off. We want to be respectful, but can you please call me directly? This does not sound like you." I stared at those words until my eyes blurred. This does not sound like you. Somebody still knew the difference. I tried to log into my business bank account. Password changed. I tried my disability portal. Password changed. I tried my cloud storage. Password changed. Then an email popped up in real time. It was from Avery to a client, but because the auto-forward rule was sloppy, a copy hit my inbox too. Naomi is still struggling with decision fatigue. Our family has agreed she should not be involved in active client communication until her doctors clear her. Ellis & Co. will honor Northline rates for 60 days. My family had agreed. Not me, my family. I took screenshots. I forwarded them to an old personal email my parents did not know about. Then I texted my accountant, Molly. Please call me from a number my family won't recognize. Molly called 14 minutes later. Naomi, she said, I have been trying to reach you for 2 weeks. What happened? She exhaled like she had been holding anger in her mouth. Your mother sent me a business continuity letter. It said you were temporarily incapable. I asked for a doctor's certification. She sent a 1-page note with Dr. Shah's name on it, but it looked wrong. Wrong how? No letterhead watermark, no patient ID, and it used the phrase renal confusion. That's not a normal medical phrase. My skin went cold. Can you send it to me? Already did to your backup email. Naomi, did you authorize any client transfer? No. Did you authorize your father on the business account? No. Then you need to call Maple Ridge today. I called from the bathroom, with the fan running. The first branch employee was polite, but stiff. She said Dad was now listed as an authorized signer pending compliance review. She could not discuss details because the account was under family continuity management. I am the owner, I said. I understand, but the file says you are medically unavailable. I am medically available enough to speak. She hesitated, then her voice changed. Ms. Ellis, are you safe right now? That question almost broke me. Her name was Priya Nair. She was a credit union fraud analyst, and she knew what a shaky voice in a bathroom meant. She did not tell me everything on that call. She did something better. She asked yes or no questions. Did you sign a request, adding your father as an authorized signer? No. Did you direct your disability deposits to Carol Ellis's checking account? No. Are you being prevented from accessing your financial records? I looked at the bathroom door. Mom was calling my name from the hall. Yes, I whispered. Priya said, I am placing a temporary internal hold. Do not confront them with that. Can you come to a branch with identification? Not alone. Do you have a doctor, social worker, accountant, or friend who can bring you? I thought of Tessa Moore, my transplant social worker. She had given me her direct card before discharge and said, call me if home support gets complicated. At the time, I thought complicated meant medication costs. I called Tessa after midnight from the guest room, with the blanket over my head like a teenager hiding from parents. She answered on the 3rd ring. Naomi. I think my family is stealing my business. There was no dramatic gasp. Tessa was a professional. She asked where I was, whether anyone had hit me, whether I had medication, whether I could leave for a clinic appointment the next morning. Then she said, we are going to document this carefully. That added another record. The next morning, I told Mom I had pain near the incision. She panicked because anything medical scared her when it was visible. She drove me to St. Agnes, complaining the whole way about how I made simple recovery stressful. At the transplant clinic, Tessa met us in the waiting room and said she needed to update my post-discharge support plan privately. Mom did not like that. I'm her mother, she said. Tessa smiled, and she is an adult patient. Behind the exam room door, I handed Tessa my phone. Screenshots, emails, bank lockout, the strange doctor's note from Molly. Dr. Shah came in 20 minutes later. She read the fake note and her expression went flat. I did not write this. She opened my chart and printed the real visit notes from March 29th and April 5th. Both said the same thing in clinical language. Alert, oriented, understands medications, independently manages transplant care, no cognitive deficits noted. Then she wrote a new letter. Naomi Ellis is medically recovering from kidney transplant surgery. She is competent to manage her medical, personal, and financial decisions. Any document suggesting transplant-related cognitive incapacity from this office should be verified directly. She signed it in blue ink. Tessa made 3 copies. One for me, one for the hospital legal office, one for Adult Protective Services. That was the first time I heard those words applied to me. Adult Protective Services. I'm 34, I said. Tessa nodded. Vulnerable adult does not mean old. It means someone is being exploited while medically vulnerable. I sat there with the paper in my lap and felt 2 things at once: shame and relief. Shame because I had let my parents back into my life at the exact moment they could hurt me most. Relief because the room believed me. Tessa drove me to Maple Ridge Credit Union after the appointment. Not my mother. Tessa. Mom waited in the clinic lobby for 37 minutes before realizing I had left through the staff exit. At Maple Ridge, Priya met us in a small interview office with frosted glass walls. She had a tablet, a yellow legal pad, and a stack of printed forms. Before we start, she said, I need to verify that you are here voluntarily. I am. Do you want your parents or sister to have access to your personal or business accounts? No. Did you authorize any account changes after March 11th? No. She turned the tablet toward me. The direct deposit request for my disability policy had been submitted from my parents' IP address at 9:12 p.m. on March 14th. The signature image was crooked. My last name was written in a loop I never used. The business signer request had been uploaded by Avery using the credit union's commercial portal. The POA attachment had pages missing. The account memo from the branch employee said, "Daughter recovering from transplant, family says decision capacity limited." Who said that? I asked. Priya tapped the screen. Your mother, during a recorded verification call. She played 11 seconds. Mom's voice filled the office. Naomi is not herself. The transplant drugs make her confused. We are keeping the wheels turning until Avery can stabilize the clients. I did not cry. I think my body was too tired for it. Priya stopped the audio. The phrase, "until Avery can stabilize the clients," is why this came to my desk, she said. This is not normal bill payment support. This looks like business diversion. Business diversion. I wrote the phrase down on the back of an appointment reminder because I needed ugly things to have accurate names. Priya froze my personal online changes, removed the pending signer request, and opened a financial exploitation case. She also contacted my disability insurer's fraud unit while I sat there. The insurer had already paid 2 checks into my mother's account. $4,800 on March 22nd. $4,800 on April 5th. Mom had told me the policy was delayed. That turned suspicion into theft. I did not go back to my parents' house that night. Tessa helped me get into a short-term hospital-affiliated recovery apartment usually used for transplant patients who lived far from St. Agnes. It was 1 room, 1 bed, 1 table, 1 lamp. It felt like a palace because the door locked from my side. My medications were still at my parents' house. Dad refused to bring them. You are acting hysterical, he said over the phone. Come home and we will discuss it calmly. I need my tacrolimus and mycophenolate. Then stop threatening your mother. Tessa heard that on speaker. She called the transplant pharmacy. Within 2 hours, emergency replacement doses were delivered by courier. The pharmacy flagged my medication profile so only I, Tessa, or Dr. Shaw could change pickup permissions. My parents had not stolen my kidney medication, but they had tried to use it as leverage. That mattered later, too. The next 10 days were the longest quiet fight of my life. I did not storm the studio. I did not send angry emails to every client. I wanted to. I typed 3 versions of a message that started with, "My sister stole my business while I was in surgery." Molly told me to wait. "Records first," she said. "Rage later if you still want it." So we built the proof ladder. Molly pulled invoice histories, retainer agreements, and tax records proving Northline owned the client relationships. Brewline Coffee sent me the weird transition email and the flawed label files Avery had delivered. A soap maker named Janelle sent a voicemail from Avery saying, "Naomi gets overwhelmed now, so the family is protecting the brand." Protecting the brand. That was not even Avery's phrase. She had learned from Mom. My landlord sent security footage from March 24th. Dad, Avery, and 2 movers entered my office at 7:18 p.m. using my spare key. They carried out the standing printer, 2 monitors, sample shelves, and 6 banker boxes. The lease did not allow after-hours removal without tenant authorization. The landlord had saved the footage because he thought it was strange that I was not there. The storage company sent gate logs. Avery's SUV entered Unit 118 twice that same night. A month-to-month storage unit had been opened under Ellis and co-creative with my printer's serial number handwritten on the intake form as office asset. That showed my office had been emptied on purpose. On April 18th, the midpoint hit, and it was bigger than client theft. Priya called me from Maple Ridge. "Naomi, are you sitting down?" I was at the recovery apartment table, sorting medication receipts. "Yes." "Your sister applied for a $60,000 small business continuity grant through the Chamber Partnership." "For her business?" "For Ellis and Co-Creative. The application says her company preserved 10 client accounts from a medically incapacitated owner and prevented local product launches from failing." I closed my eyes. She used me as the disaster. "It gets worse," Priya said. "The application included your portfolio, your client list, and a support letter from your parents saying they were your legal financial managers." My first thought was not the money. It was the word preserved. Avery had stolen my accounts, damaged 2 active projects, changed my passwords, moved my equipment, and then asked the chamber to reward her for saving what she had stolen. Priya sent me the application through secure email. I read it 3 times. There was a paragraph about my transplant. There was a paragraph about cognitive uncertainty. There was a paragraph about Avery's courage stepping into a crisis. And at the bottom was a projected use of funds: office build-out, software migration, client stabilization, public launch event. The launch event was scheduled for May 9th. That was the same event where my mother would later call me a liability. The grant packet included one more document: a family continuity agreement supposedly signed by me on March 19th, giving Avery temporary rights to use Northline files, templates, client lists, and design assets for 18 months. I was in St. Agnes on March 19th with a fever of 101.8 and a drain still attached to my body. The hospital visitor log showed Mom and Avery left my room at 6:12 p.m. The DocuSign audit said the agreement was signed at 6:44 p.m. from the public Wi-Fi at a cafe 2 blocks from the hospital. The signature was not mine. That made the grant look criminal. For 3 minutes after reading it, I could not move. The recovery apartment was silent except for the refrigerator. I remember looking at my pill organizer and thinking, this is how they did it. They did not need to convince a judge I was incompetent. They only needed enough people to repeat it until everyone got tired of asking me. Tessa came over that evening with soup and sat across from me while I stared at the grant packet. "They made my surgery into a business plan," I said. "Yes," she said. She did not soften it. "I want to ruin the launch. Then ruin it with records." That became the rule. The next week, the official pieces moved fast because the fraud touched institutions that hated looking foolish. Maple Ridge opened a commercial fraud review. The chamber paused the grant disbursement, but did not tell Avery why. Adult Protective Services assigned an investigator named Luis Romero. My disability insurer opened a recovery case for the diverted checks. St. Agnes legal office verified Dr. Shaw's real notes and flagged the fake capacity letter. The storage company preserved footage. My landlord gave a sworn statement. And my parents kept texting. Mom, you are confused and people are taking advantage of that. Dad, Avery saved your accounts and you are punishing her. Avery, you should be grateful I made Northline look professional. Mom again, we kept the wheels turning. That is what family does. The phrase appeared in texts, voicemails, and emails until it stopped sounding like support and started sounding like a threat. My favorite message, if a person can have a favorite piece of evidence, came on April 28th. Mom left a voicemail at 7:06 p.m. Naomi, listen to me carefully. You were on dialysis. Then you were cut open. You do not get to decide what happened during that time. We decided. We kept the wheels turning, and now you are trying to embarrass us because you cannot accept that Avery is better at people than you are. She probably thought she was being firm. Luis Romero called it an admission of substituted decision-making without authority. I called it my mother's real voice. The first official witness meeting happened on May 2nd at Maple Ridge. It was not the final climax, but it showed me how facts change a room. I sat at the conference table with Priya, Louis, Molly, Tessa, and a credit union compliance manager named Mr. Alvarez. My parents joined by video with their attorney. Avery joined from her studio. She had arranged plants behind her and wore a cream blazer like she was giving a webinar. Mr. Alvarez kept his voice dry. We are reviewing disputed account authority, possible business diversion, and possible misuse of medical incapacity claims. Dad said, this is a family misunderstanding. Priya projected the POA pages. The submitted packet omitted page 4. Dad said, we sent what we had. Priya projected the signed original from my file, with page 4 included. Limited bill payment only. No transfer of business goodwill, no assignment of contracts, no authority to add signers, no authority to alter disability payments. My father rubbed his forehead. Mom said, Naomi knew what we were doing. Tessa slid Dr. Shaw's letter across the table. Naomi was competent. Avery leaned toward her camera. Competent medically does not mean she could manage clients. Molly opened a folder. Then, why did you use her active design templates without a license? Avery blinked. Molly placed printouts on the table. Brewline label system, Northline invoice history, Avery's revised files with my grid and margin notes still embedded in the layers. My initials were in the file names. Any Brewline Master 2023, any Soprap line final. Avery had not even renamed all of them. Mr. Alvarez looked at Avery through the screen. Did you create these files? They were family resources, Avery said. The room went still. That sentence did more damage than yelling could have. Family resources. My labor, my templates, my clients, my illness, all resources. After the meeting, Priya told me the credit union would recommend full account restoration and a fraud referral, but the chamber grant required a separate review because funds had not disbursed yet. The launch event was still scheduled. Avery had already invited clients, vendors, chamber members, and local press. The chamber did not want a public mess, but they also needed a formal applicant interview before canceling the award. That interview was scheduled for May 9th at 4 p.m., 1 hour before the ribbon cutting. You can attend, Priya said. So can your parents and Avery, so can the investigator. I asked one question. Will the clients be there? Some are on the witness list. I said yes, before fear could talk me out of it. If this kind of record-led story might help someone who is being called confused just because they are sick, share it with them and subscribe if you want more stories where the paperwork finally talks. The week before the launch, I got stronger in small ways. I walked 2 blocks without stopping. I answered client emails from my recovery apartment. I rebuilt access to my cloud files with Molly sitting beside me. I changed every password. I wrote a clean 1-page notice to my clients. I did not accuse Avery in that notice. I wanted to. Instead, I wrote the truth I could prove. Northline Paper has not closed. I have not authorized any transfer of client accounts, templates, billing, or design assets to Ellis & Co. Creative. I am medically cleared to manage my work in limited hours during transplant recovery. Please direct all questions to me and my accountant. 8 clients replied within a day. 3 said they were relieved. 2 said they had already paid deposits to Avery. 1 sent screenshots showing Avery had offered a discounted rescue package if they signed before my recovery got more legally complicated. Brewline Coffee called me directly. The owner, Samir, said, "Naomi, I should have pushed harder." "You asked the right question," I said. "This does not sound like you." That question kept me from thinking I was crazy. He was quiet for a second. "Tell me where to be." So I did. On May 9th, I put on the gray dress because it was the only dress that fit my post-surgery body and did not pull across the incision. I tucked Dr. Shaw's letter, the credit union memo, the DocuSign audit, the grant packet, the storage gate logs, and the client statements into a white envelope. Not a black box, not a performance. An envelope. I arrived at 3:41 p.m. Avery's new studio was in a renovated brick building 2 blocks from my old office. The windows had vinyl lettering, Ellis & Co. Creative. Brand rescue for local businesses. Brand rescue. She had built her whole lie out of rescue language. Inside, the space looked like a brighter, more expensive version of mine. White desks, sample shelves, a coffee cart, plants by the window. A framed poster of Brewline's spring roast labels hung above the refreshment table. My labels. The brass drafting ruler was on the front desk in a glass tray. For a second, my vision narrowed. That ruler had been in my office the night Dad and Avery moved my equipment. It had belonged to my grandfather, the one person in my family who never treated quiet work like failure. He used to let me sit beside him while he drew straight lines and said, "Measure twice so nobody can argue with the wall." Avery had taken it as decoration. I almost walked straight to the desk and grabbed it, but Luis Romero stood near the side office and gave me a small nod. Priya stood beside the coffee cart with a tablet. Tessa was near the hallway. Molly sat at the conference table visible through the glass wall. Samir from Brewline stood by the window with Janelle, the soap maker, and Mr. Alvarez from Maple Ridge. The room was not just a party. It was a witness environment. My parents saw me at the same time. Mom's smile froze. Dad looked toward Avery. Avery came over fast, heels clicking. "You need to leave," she whispered. I was invited to the applicant review. "This is my launch." "No," I said. "It is my client list with your name on the wall." Her face hardened. "You cannot prove that." That sentence steadied me more than any kindness could have. Because I could. At 4 p.m., the chamber president, Evelyn Brooks, gathered the grant review group in the glass conference room. It was supposed to be a quick ceremonial interview before the 5 p.m. ribbon cutting. Avery sat at one end of the table. Mom and Dad sat beside her. Their attorney, Mr. Voss, opened a leather notebook. I sat across from them with Molly on my right and Tessa on my left. Priya, Luis, Mr. Alvarez, 2 chamber board members, Samir, Janelle, and a city small business officer named Dana Kim filled the rest of the room. There were more than 3 witnesses. There were enough witnesses that my parents could not rewrite the air. Evelyn began carefully. "This review concerns the pending small business continuity grant for Ellis & Co. Creative. Before disbursement, several ownership and authorization questions were raised." Avery folded her hands. I am happy to clear up the confusion. My sister has been through a major medical event, and our family stepped in to support local clients. Priya said, support is not the question, authorization is. Mr. Voss lifted a hand. My clients acted under a power of attorney. Molly slid the complete POA across the table. Limited authority, page 4. Dana Kim read the highlighted section aloud. No assignment of business contracts, intellectual property, client goodwill, or account signer authority. Mom's jaw tightened. Naomi signed because she trusted us to do what needed to be done. No, I said. I trusted you to pay rent and pick up mail. Dad leaned forward. You were not capable. Tessa opened Dr. Shaw's letter. St. Agnes Transplant Services documented Naomi's capacity on March 13th, March 29th, April 5th, and April 12th. No cognitive deficit, no financial incapacity, no medical recommendation restricting business decisions. Avery gave a small laugh. Doctors do not understand client pressure. Samir spoke from the wall. I understand my own label files. Everyone looked at him. He placed 2 printed label sheets on the table. Ellis & Co. sent these to my printer. They used Naomi's 2023 master grid, but changed measurements without knowing why the bleed was set that way. We lost a print slot because of it. When I asked for Naomi, Avery told me Naomi was mentally unreliable. Janelle added, she told me the same thing. Avery's cheeks went pink. I said Naomi was recovering. Molly played Janelle's voicemail. Avery's voice came through the little conference speaker. Naomi gets overwhelmed now, so the family is protecting the brand. It is better if she does not know every detail yet. No one moved. That recording landed harder because Avery had just tried to soften the words. Luis Romero asked, Ms. Avery Ellis, did Naomi authorize you to speak to clients about her cognitive status? She is my sister. That is not an authorization. Mom snapped. We are her family. We do not need a signed form for every breath. Priya tapped her tablet. For bank access, you do. For disability deposits, you do. For grant funds, you absolutely do. Then she played my mother's verification call. Mom's own voice filled the room. Naomi is not herself. The transplant drugs make her confused. We are keeping the wheels turning until Avery can stabilize the clients. Mom stared at the table. Dad said, that was taken out of context. Priya said, it was a recorded financial institution verification call. Mr. Alvarez projected the direct deposit change form, mother's account number, fake signature, Avery's initials on the witness line. Did Naomi sign this? He asked. Mom said nothing. Avery said, she may have. Molly opened the hospital timeline. At 9:12 p.m. on March 14th, Naomi was inpatient, under post-operative monitoring, with nurse charting at 9:10 and 9:20. No visitor was present in the room. The IP address for this submission resolves to Ron and Carol Ellis's home internet. Dad's face had gone gray. Dana Kim turned to Avery. Your grant application states those disability funds were being used for Naomi's recovery while you carried business costs. Priya said, the funds went into Carol Ellis's checking account. From there, $3,200 paid Ellis and Co-studio deposit. $1,100 paid launch catering. $2,400 paid a delinquent insurance premium on Ron Ellis's personal agency account. That was the bigger wound. They had not only stolen control, they had spent my recovery money making my sister's opening look polished. I looked through the glass wall at the cupcakes, the plants, the gold scissors, the framed label poster, and the brass ruler in its little tray. My transplant had paid for the party. Mom must have seen my face because she reached for the old weapon. Naomi, stop acting betrayed by every practical decision. We kept the wheels turning. I turned back to her. No, you took the wheel while I was sedated. It was the first sentence I had said that made Avery look scared. Lewis placed the DocuSign audit on the table. Family Continuity Agreement. Signed March 19th at 6:44 p.m. from public Wi-Fi at Juniper Cafe. Hospital visitor logs show Carol and Avery Ellis exited Naomi's hospital room at 6:12 p.m. Dr. Shaw's notes show Naomi was febrile and under observation. Ms. Naomi Ellis denies signing this document. Avery's attorney finally spoke. My client believed she had implied consent. Dana Kim looked at him like he had handed her a dead battery. The city does not disburse grant funds on implied consent to use another business's assets. Evelyn Brooks closed the grant folder. The chamber is canceling the award recommendation. Avery's mouth opened. You cannot do that an hour before my launch. Evelyn's voice stayed calm. We can do it before public funds are released. Priya added, Maple Ridge is freezing Ellis and Coase business, account pending source of funds review. Dad stood up halfway. This is absurd. Mr. Alvarez said, Sit down, Mr. Ellis. Dad sat. That is the thing about official rooms. The person who usually controls the dinner table does not automatically control the conference table. The chair, the records, the policy, the signatures, the timestamps, they all have their own weight. Lewis turned to my parents. Adult Protective Services is issuing a finding of substantiated financial exploitation related to disability funds, attempted account control, and misuse of medical vulnerability. This will be referred to the district attorney and the state insurance fraud unit. Mom whispered, Naomi, please. I had waited my whole life for my mother to say please to me and mean it. When it finally happened, it was because she wanted a record to disappear. No, I said. Then Avery made the mistake that finished it. She pushed back from the table and pointed at me. You are selfish. You were going to let all those clients fall apart because you wanted to play brave transplant patient. I stepped in. I made people comfortable. You make everyone work around your sickness. The glass wall did not block sound as well as she thought. People in the studio turned toward us. The photographer raised his camera again. Mom stood fast and opened the conference room door, trying to close the sound behind her. Instead, she carried the fight into the public room. Everyone, please excuse this, she said with a tight smile. Naomi has been unstable since surgery. I stood too. My legs shook, but not enough to stop me. Say the rest, I told her. Don't start. Say what you said in private. My father hissed, Naomi. Mom looked around at the clients, the chamber members, the neighbors, the caterer, the photographer, the barber from downstairs, and the 2 local reporters who had come for a feel-good launch story. She thought the room still belonged to her. So she said it. Nobody hires a woman who needed a new kidney. We only moved her clients because she was a liability. The room went silent. That was the line from the beginning. The line she thought would make me look weak. The line that told every person there exactly what kind of support she had given me. I set the white envelope on the registration table. Then you won't mind opening this in front of the credit union officer, I said. Avery laughed, then stopped when she saw the Maple Ridge logo. Priya stepped out of the conference room. Lewis followed. Evelyn Brooks took the gold scissors off the ribbon table and laid them flat beside the cupcakes, like the ceremony itself had been canceled by gravity. Mom said, Naomi, don't embarrass this family. You used my transplant to steal my business. Embarrassment is the smallest thing in this building. Priya addressed the room, not loudly but clearly. For anyone here as a client, vendor, or grant partner of Ellis and Co-Creative, Maple Ridge Credit Union is advising that payments to this business account are frozen pending review. Do not send additional funds today. Avery made a strangled sound. Dana Kim added, the pending small business continuity grant has been canceled. The city will issue a written notice. Samir from Brewline stepped forward. And Brewline Coffee is withdrawing from Ellis, and Co. we are staying with Northline. Janelle said, same for Lark Soap. A third client, a bakery owner named Paul, raised his hand from the refreshment table. Same. It was not revenge in the way people imagine revenge. No one dumped wine. No one slapped anyone. It was quieter and much more permanent. One by one, the records removed the costume from the room. The grant poster came down first. Evelyn took it off the easel and handed it to a staff member without looking at Avery. The photographer stopped taking ribbon-cutting shots and began photographing the empty scissors. The caterer asked who would be paying the balance. The landlord of Avery's studio, who had been invited as a proud building owner, asked Priya whether frozen funds affected the first month's rent check. My sister looked at my parents. For once, they had nothing useful to give her. Then I walked to the front desk and picked up the brass drafting ruler. Avery stepped toward me. That belongs to the studio. No, I said. It belonged to Grandpa. Then it belonged to Northline. It was removed from my office on March 24th at 7:18 p.m. Your storage intake photo shows it in the same box as my sample books. The storage manager, a man named Keith who had been quiet near the hallway, said, That's correct. Avery stared at him like he had betrayed her. He shrugged. You asked me to bring the records. I slipped the ruler into my tote bag. It was heavier than I remembered. 2 weeks later, the written findings arrived. Maple Ridge restored sole control of my personal and business accounts. The attempted signer change was voided. The credit union's commercial fraud memo went to the district attorney. My disability insurer reversed the direct deposit change and issued replacement payments to me, then opened recovery against my mother. The chamber issued a formal grant denial for material misrepresentation. Ellis & Co.'s lease collapsed when Avery could not show clean funding. My printer and monitors came back through a civil recovery order, scratched but usable. The district attorney did not move as fast as people want in stories, but the case did move. In July 2024, my parents and Avery were charged with theft by deception, forged instrument, insurance fraud, and exploitation of a vulnerable adult. The forged medical letter added a separate referral. Dr. Shah testified in the preliminary hearing. So did Tessa, Priya, Molly, Samir, Janelle, and the storage manager. My mother's attorney tried to make it sound like an overwhelmed family doing its best. The prosecutor read Mom's voicemail aloud. You were on dialysis, then you were cut open. You do not get to decide what happened during that time, we decided. The judge looked over his glasses and said, That is not care, that is control. I wrote that down. That is not care, that is control. My parents took a plea in November. Dad got probation, restitution, and a ban from serving as anyone's financial agent for 5 years. Mom got 6 months of home confinement, probation, restitution, and a no-contact order she violated twice by sending me articles about forgiveness. Avery pleaded separately after the grant fraud evidence got worse. She had used my portfolio in 2 more applications I had not even known about. She received probation, community service, restitution, and a permanent civil injunction barring her from using Northline files, client lists, templates, or my medical history and business materials. I wanted access back. I wanted my work back. I wanted every institution used against me to write down the truth. I got that. The first written confirmation arrived on December 6, 2024. It was a packet from Maple Ridge, 19 pages, with a cover letter signed by Mr. Alvarez. Sole account authority restored to Naomi Ellis. Unauthorized signer request rejected. Fraud loss reimbursement completed. Disability deposit correction confirmed. Business continuity claims by third parties invalidated. I read that sentence 3 times at my kitchen table in the recovery apartment. Then I opened the second envelope. It was from Brewline Coffee, a new 12-month retainer, Same rate as before, plus a rush fee they insisted on paying because Avery's bad files had cost them time. At the bottom, Samir had written, in blue pen, "Northline never sounded like anyone but you." That was the first time the win felt personal, not just official. The real one came the next morning, when I moved back into my old office. The landlord had held the lease after hearing what happened. Molly helped me carry boxes. Tessa came on her lunch break with a plant she swore was hard to kill. My incisions still ached when I lifted anything heavier than a stack of paper, so everyone kept taking things out of my hands. I put the printer back by the west wall. I put the sample shelves near the window. I taped a handwritten sign to the door that said Northline Paper, open by appointment. Then I set my grandfather's brass, drafting ruler on the desk. There was a small scratch near the 11-inch mark from wherever Avery had stored it. I ran my thumb over it and heard Grandpa's voice in my memory. Measure twice, so nobody can argue with the wall. I measured everything after that. I measured bank access. I measured client permissions. I measured who got emergency contacts and who got distance. I measured family words against family actions and stopped pretending the numbers matched. By spring 2025, my kidney numbers were stable. I worked 25 hours a week. That was enough. Northline had 8 steady clients, then 10, then 13. I hired a part-time production assistant named Leona who loved spreadsheets more than I did. We built a rule into every client contract. No account transfer, no file release, no medical status discussion with third parties without written authorization directly from me. It sounded cold, until a client with lupus asked to borrow the clause for her own business. So I made a plain language template for the transplant clinic. Tessa printed copies for patients who ran small businesses, farms, Etsy shops, cleaning companies, anything that could be stolen under the soft word help. I did not start a nonprofit. I did not become a public speaker overnight. Healing was smaller than that at first. It was taking pills at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. It was walking past my parents' street without turning in. It was seeing Avery's name online and not checking what she was doing. It was answering a client call without wondering whether they heard weakness in my voice. It was sleeping with my phone beside me because I wanted it there, not because I was afraid someone would take it. My parents tried to send messages through relatives. Aunt Linda said Mom was devastated. A church friend mailed me a note about honoring family. I kept one response printed by the door. Family does not need stolen passwords. I never sent it. I did not need to. The court order said enough. In March 2025, 1 year after the transplant, Dr. Shah walked into the exam room smiling before she even sat down. "Your labs are beautiful," she said. Beautiful is not a word I expected for kidney numbers. Take the compliment. So I did. After the appointment, I stopped by the dialysis clinic, not because I missed it. Nobody misses the machine. I went because Marcus, the tech from my first day, had messaged Tessa that a new patient was scared about signing paperwork with her son. The woman was 52, a hairdresser, sitting in the same kind of recliner where I had once tried to answer emails with numb fingers. Her name was Belinda. She had a folder on her lap and fear all over her face. I sat beside her and did not tell her what to do. I said, ask what the paper allows. Ask what it does not allow. Keep a complete copy. Send one to someone outside the family. If anyone gets angry because you read it, keep reading. She looked at me for a long time. Did somebody do that to you? Yes. Did you get it back? I thought of the credit union packet, the client retainer, the ruler on my desk, the clean lab results, the lock on my office door. Enough of it, I said, and the rest stopped belonging to them. That is what survival looked like for me, not one perfect victory, not a movie ending, a stack of corrected records, a business account with one signer, a doctor who wrote the truth clearly, a social worker who knew the side exit, a credit union analyst who asked if I was safe. Clients who noticed when a message did not sound like me, a brass ruler back on the desk where it belonged. My name is Naomi Ellis. I am a kidney transplant recipient, a business owner, a daughter who learned the difference between help and control, and a woman who keeps complete copies now. My family said they kept the wheels turning. They did not understand that wheels leave tracks. And this time, every track led back to them,